Good afternoon, everyone. It is now 3:30, so I will call the Infrastructure, Transportation, and Safety meeting to order. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? We have no delegations scheduled, so item number 4 is report of the project engineer, and 4.1 is accessible on-street parking spaces on Lakeside Drive. Mr. Jalovic, did you want to give a brief overview of the report?
I will. Oh, she's just joining. We'll get our project engineer, Michelle Pinto, to speak to that. It is her report. So,
great.
Michelle,
so, Ms. Pinto, whenever you're ready.
Hi, through the chair. So in May, at the end of May, we were asked to look at implementing accessible on-street parking on Lakeside Drive in the section east of Queen Street. So we came up with a design, and this is the eastmost parking spots on Lakeside Drive east of Queen Street. And it would be replacing 3 regular parking spots with 2 accessible spots, on-street parking spaces. And we ran the concept by the Accessibility Advisory Committee to obtain their approval, and we incorporated some changes to the proposed design after receiving their feedback. And so the attachment 2 has the type A and type B 2 accessible parking spaces. One will accommodate a van that can deploy a ramp, and one is just the typical parking space, or the not for a van. And there will be an access aisle in between. So, yep, that's pretty much it. We're looking to amend the bylaw to implement these accessible parking spaces on Lakeside Drive east of Queen Street. And the attachment 1 also shows where there is existing accessible parking on Lakeside Drive in this stretch, just to give you context for the other accessible parking spots in the area. So I'm happy to take any questions. That's all I have for this report.
Yeah. So happy to, are there any questions for Ms. Pinto, or there is a staff recommendation there? Councillor Gaffney and then Councillor Burbank.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. I just look at this, and where the 2 spots are being proposed for is sort of, I see it as being pretty far away from where the action is generally down there. Like, it's not close to Tom Patterson Island or the access to the theater or the baseball park. So my question is, would there be some merit in suggesting these 2 spots go at the go west, like right at Queen Street, instead of all the way down at the other end? I don't know if that's an acceptable alternative, or even if it's an idea at all.
Through the chair, we did look at this alternative, and in consultation with the Accessibility Advisory Committee, we decided on this location because of, 1, of the location of the curb cut, and 2, because it won't impact any mature trees, and it would be less concrete work and costs associated with this selected location.
Okay, Councillor Burbank, you had a question?
I do, and it kind of follows from that. I'm just wondering what kind of infrastructure there would be then for a person who needs assistance to be able to, like, there's no sidewalks, or there's no pathway. So we're pretty much thinking that that person's going to have to cross the traffic to get to the other side. I mean, I know there's a curb cut, so does a curb cut allow them then to get onto the path close to the bridge? Was that the thought?
Through the chair, yeah, they could either, they would cross the street and go to the north side of the street, and they could either go towards the bridge, or they could go west towards the rest of the park area.
Okay, thank you. I think if the Accessibility Advisory Committee recommended it, then it's probably the best spot. I did have a question which may or may not be part of this discussion, but about Lakeside Drive more in general. I don't know if this is a good time to have that conversation, or would you like to do it later?
Perhaps we could do it later so we can deal with the item that's being discussed now. Yeah, so just remind me near the end under some new business. Councillor Seven and then Councillor Ingram.
I was just going to move the recommendation, but if Councillor Ingram wants to speak first, then that's
Well,
fine as well.
you could move it. You could move it, and she could speak to it before we take.
I'll move it.
So moved by Councillor Seven. Councillor Ingram.
I was also going to move.
Okay. So do we have any other discussion on this specific item? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, and that's carried. Thank you so much, Ms. Pinto. So moving on to item number 5, report of the Director of Infrastructure and Development Services. The first item is 5.1, which is Kelly's Lane. So Mr. Zlovic, did you want to just give us a brief highlight of this report?
Yeah, through the chair, as noted in the report, the city assumed the ownership of, well, Kelly's Lane came into the city's boundaries back in 1966, at which time it was a private lane and servicing 3 properties at the time. And over the years, there has been maintenance performed on that road. Some of it by the city and some of it by the property owners themselves. As you can see from the records that we have, you know, going back, we can see some work done in 1977, 1980, 88, 89, where the property owners funded 2 of them. The city cost shared in 1, and then another one was funded by the city. We couldn't find any. And then there's the street lighting that's sitting on the north side and is actually sitting on golf course lands. Unfortunately, we couldn't find any documentation to lead to how we got to this point. You know, why the city undertook maintenance. You know, was there maintenance being undertaken before the city annexed those lands in at the time? So unfortunately, there really wasn't anything for us from a staff perspective to look at. And as a matter of fact, it's something that was looked at by council back in 1999. Again, some discussion I think was taking place then. You know, should the city assume the lane? And after receiving some legal opinions, and again, not a lot of information could be found, but what we could find is that the city council of the day did not take any further action to assume the ownership of the lane. As noted, this is the only private road/lane that the city provides any type of services to. And so the options are that we continue to do what we're doing, or that we stop the winter maintenance, and as those street lighting, and in the future when the street lighting needs significant repair, we simply remove that. As also noted, we've stopped doing any type of pothole patching or anything out there on the lane, and we haven't received any requests from the owner to do that. So if there are any further questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I have some questions, but if anybody else has a couple questions, I'll go first. Councillor Burback.
Yes, thank you. Couple questions. So the report kind of indicates that if the city did take over the lane, that the cost would increase. That's obvious. But would the taxes collected not also increase for the people along that laneway that would cover the increased services? And the other question I had was about garbage collection. What happens with garbage collection for those residents? Because I do know that they were asking as well about participating in the green bin program. So yeah, those are my questions.
Yeah, through the chair, currently the waste collection is done on that laneway, and so that would include recycling and green bin. I do know that there's the Greens community that have talked about potentially wanting to have green bin collection, and that is a private road there too, and they were suggesting to use Kelly's Lane to put their green bins out on it. But again, that's a private lane. As with respect to property taxes, I mean, it's based on MPAC, and then the evaluations would be done by MPAC, and that would be up to MPAC to determine whether or not there would be any change in property value if they were actually on a city road allowance as opposed to on a private lane.
Okay, thank you.
So I had a number of questions. So we do not have a formal legal agreement with the owners of Kelly's Lane that takes into account any of these considerations. I'm thinking about indemnification, how much minimum insurance they have to carry, what are some of the minimum maintenance standards that they would have to actually have on the lane for our services to go down. So do we have a formal agreement with them on any of these issues? Because if we don't,
We do not.
no. So this goes back to because we don't have a formal agreement with them and we don't know what their insurance coverage is. We don't know what the minimum maintenance that they would have to use on that lane. I mean, there are some other private roads in the city, and the private roads usually are the condominium, ownership takes care of those roads, but there are standards that are required and there's agreements in place with the owners, with the owners of the private roads and the homeowners. So I have some serious concerns with continuing an informal arrangement that doesn't spell out any obligations on the part of the owner of the road, and yet what the city is doing is taking on a significant amount of risk, both for our employees on a road that is not maintained to a specific standard, but also for snow clearance and things like that. So, I'm just curious whether anyone has had a conversation with the owners about going into a formal agreement that could spell out their obligations.
Through the chair, I'm not aware of any conversations that have taken place. I know during my time here, there hasn't been. And again, in looking through, there's not been, unfortunately, just not a lot of information with respect to this laneway, and even previous planning applications. It was brought forward with respect to it being a private lane and services being provided. There was never any question brought up with respect to liability and entering into any formal agreement.
Yeah, because I do know that I think the original motion, it did come, I think for me, it was to come up with some kind of like a legal sort of framework for if we are to continue to provide services, we really do need to have a legal agreement with the owners. If we don't, then that's moot. Then it just, they can take care of any of the lane issues with the people who actually have property along the lane. Any other questions, or anybody willing to put forward a recommendation? Councillor Ingram and then Councillor Gaffney.
So I understand that the property owner isn't interested in having the city gain ownership of the lane, but would they entertain an easement in favor of the city over top of this lane?
To the chair, I do not know. I do know specifically when I've had conversations with the owner, they wanted to maintain ownership on it. Just to let you know, legally the city can assume the lane if it wanted to. It has every right to do that because we can say we've done maintenance. There are other property owners, we're going to take it over. So the challenges is the width of the road, the condition of it. But if there was any major reconstruction, we would more than likely, as we have in the past for other roads in the city, gone through local improvement and have them pay. Some challenges is just the width of that lane, and we do have some challenges, especially at the end when it comes to having a turnaround for larger vehicles. So I mean, sure, that is an option, but what's the easement going to say? Again, we would then get into an agreement, maintenance agreements. If we're going to continue to provide winter maintenance, who's liable? We did have a claim that I could see in the area, and it turned out to be on lands that the city actually owned in the immediate area. It wasn't on the private property owners on the laneway itself, but it was in close proximity. So it ended up being the city's responsibility because there was a trip and fall there. But yeah, so that would be an interesting one. If we got a claim there, who would be responsible? Would it be the owner? Would it be the city? In that, the owner's been doing some maintenance out there as he's described on the surface over the last few years, because we haven't gone out there to do any pothole repair or anything like that.
So I'm thinking that if the owner was willing to grant the city an easement, then like you said, we could enter into all of those agreements that would deal with the liability and the maintenance and all of these other issues. Because I think, you know, we do have residents that are living there, and they have certainly, I'm sure they've come to enjoy the services that we're providing, especially the snow clearing. And they definitely would probably be upset with the removal of any street lights, because it would be fairly dark back in that area. So I wonder if we could, maybe I'll make it a motion that staff speak with the property owner and see if they would be willing to enter into an easement agreement with the city for the use and then maintenance and liability of that lane.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor about Councillor Gaffney and Councillor Burbach afterward.
Right now or after?
There is, yeah, no, there's a motion. Did you want to speak to it?
Well, I wanted, well, no, I wanted to ask a question on what the original discussion was.
Okay, well, go ahead and ask the question.
If we were, and maybe it's too late now, and through you, Madam Chair, if we went with option number 2, as described in the report, I have some difficulty understanding why the street lights are part of it, because if the city, it's on country club property, so the city would have no right of ownership on the lights. I suspect that some agreement between the original landowner and the country club was made to put those street lights on. So I wouldn't be comfortable assuming that we'd be given direction to the country club on what to do with street lights that are on their property. But we may not get there today. Thank you.
I was going to say, if maybe Mr. Delovic can clarify, but I believe that the current owners of the country club do not want them on their property.
Yeah, through the chair for clarification, the current owner of the country club fully understands that those are city infrastructure, and their position is that is city infrastructure. And at first they were talking about having us remove the lights. And then I think after some discussion, they said, okay, they can stay, but I want it understood that in the future, if you say you need to replace a pole, you're not going to put it back on my property. Again, there's no information as to how those lights were installed. I can only suspect, because the country club does lease land for the city for a couple of their holes. It was probably a shake hand agreement saying, hey, no problem, go ahead, put those lights up on our property to light up the lane. What the other challenge is, where this all came up, is that Festival Hydro also has infrastructure sitting on country club property to service those homes on Kelly's Lane. So again, it's like in the future when you need to replace those transformers, they don't want it on their property. They want it on the laneway or on the homes that it serves, those type of things. So again, it's just one of these things that over time was done that everyone got along, didn't require agreements, and simply said it's okay to put this infrastructure on the property. But now we have a new property owner there in respect to the country club, who's now looking at it saying, hey, I want some of this stuff cleared up because I don't want this stuff sitting on my property.
So just before I go to Councillor Burbach, that tweaks me then. If we have an easement, if we have a motion on the floor to explore an easement, we will have to include utilities then within that. Because if the country club doesn't want them and they're servicing houses that are on the lane, then part of that easement agreement is going to have to be the relocation of utilities at some point in the future as well. Is that Councillor Ingram? Would that include that? Okay. So Councillor Burbach, go ahead, and then Councillor Gaffney.
So my question was actually also about easement, and would we then include the waste pickup? I mean, we already do that, but that should probably be part of the formal agreement as well. So I'm just curious, making sure that that's part of that easement as well. Any services that we would provide.
Yeah, through the chair, it would include all services that we provide, waste collection, recycling, green bin, waste management, winter maintenance, and then you would also have to talk about road maintenance, you know, because you know, does the owner want us then to start doing potholes? If you know, future capital works, if it is, then it would be understood that, you know, we would proceed as under local improvement, where we would be looking to the property owners to pay for it, those type of things. So it would have to be an all-encompassing agreement.
And including, I mean, the school buses go down there as well, so the school board's going to have to, or the transportation company from the school board is probably going to have to be informed as well.
Through the chair, they have gone down that road in the past. There is a sign up that says private road. And so I don't know if they continue to go down there, because we've heard if it says private road, they won't go down them. But that, at the end of the day, that's up to the school bus companies and what they do. But there is signage up to that effect.
Okay, Councillor Gaffney?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, and to get an easement on this road, there would be a cost involved in that. Like, would we have to pay the owner some sort of dollars to make this, just like we'd have to pay them if we took over the road, I suspect? Thank you.
Through the chair, no, in taking over a road, we wouldn't pay the owner. My understanding of the Municipal Act, because, you know, we've spent money on it, it's a right of way that's been established. There's no compensation that goes back to the owner for it. I mean, quite frankly, what's happening is that if you think about it, if the city goes on and doing maintenance, we're taking liability off the owner. We are, you know, it's still ensuring that services are being provided not only to this owner, but to other properties along the way. So that, I mean, we wouldn't be contemplating and providing any payment to the owner, whether it's an easement or whether we assume the road or what have we wouldn't be looking at that.
Okay, Councillor Seven, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. So just to clarify, so if they're not, if the property owners are not interested in easements, then would we come back to sort of to give direction based on the report in front of us now?
Through the chair, I think my understanding is that, you know, if this motion is successful, I would then engage the property owner, and then depending on how that went, you know, I'd report back to this committee as to how the conversation went and provide more information and what the direction that the owners are prepared to proceed.
Okay, thank you. And just as a follow-up, so if we do enter into an easement agreement, are there standards that we would have to bring, or is there some type of, since we would have liability or whatever would happen, would there be a standard we would have to bring, for instance, the road up to as part of that agreement, just because of you know, municipal standards or anything like that? Would we be on the hook to like repave the road or something like that?
Through the chair, that's where we would get into local improvement. There are minimum maintenance standards and things like that we would have. And if we were to go into that direction, you know, our recommendation would be to go through the local improvement process that we've done on streets in the city. We just recently did that on Pleasant, where we went through the local improvement process. This would be no different. In this case, we would proceed in that, saying, you know, we would build the road up so that it can accommodate the heavy traffic that's there already, and those type of things. And then there would be a cost assigned to those property owners.
Okay, thank you.
And as a follow-up, I would say that in the absence of an agreement like that, or bringing the road up to a certain standard, if there isn't any obligation on the part of the homeowner or the lane owner to bring it up to a standard, then over time our risk and the assumption of risk that we take will only go up. So I think the motion on the floor is pretty much the only reasonable risk like the only reasonable approach to take from a risk assessment perspective, if we're going to actually continue to have access on the road. That's just my opinion on it, but it seems to me that over time this is only going to get more problematic. Are there any other questions on this? There is a motion on the floor, lots of clarity around it. Councillor Ingram.
Thank you. So Mr. Dulovic, would it be helpful for me to amend the motion that should the owner not be willing to enter into an easement agreement, that we choose one of the staff recommendations, and that way we don't necessarily have to circle back. Would that be helpful?
To the chair, I'll leave it to this committee. You know, maybe you would want me to, it's up to you if you want me to come back after the discussions just to get a sense of some more information from the owner and before you make your decision. But I'll leave it to the committee to decide.
Okay, then I'll leave it as is. Thank you.
Okay, if there aren't any other comments or questions, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion on the floor? Opposed, if any? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you so much. So moving on now to item 5.2 is off-road vehicle bylaw. So Mr. Zlovic, again?
Yes, to the chair. As noted in the report, we have an existing all-terrain vehicle bylaw. It is somewhat dated in that there have been changes through the Highway Traffic Act about what is allowed. I do want to make it clear that what they've done with the amendments into the Highway Traffic Act, they've identified more of these off-road vehicles that could be allowed to be on highways. However, they're not allowed. It has to be by permission by the local municipality. So we still control it. Just because they've made changes in the city of Stratford's case, in some of the northern communities, it's the Highway Traffic Act that rules. But in our case, it still has to be by bylaw to allow these vehicles to run on our roads. And so, you know, I think they've got, because of the technology, you've got more types of vehicles, ATVs, off-road vehicles, all kinds of different vehicles that they talk about. So, you know, they've talked about some more, they've identified them. They talked about more of restrictions, speeds, you know, safety and those type of things. But really what this came up to, why this came to the forefront was because we had an officer that was laying tickets against one of our contractors who was using a UTV, a utility terrain vehicle, for clearing sidewalks of snow that we hired out for winter snow pickup in the wintertime. And so what the police said when they looked at our bylaw and the Highway Traffic Act, said we needed to update our bylaw in order to allow these UTVs to operate on city roads and on sidewalks for the winter maintenance. Hence, we did the review, and it was a good timing because of the changes under the Highway Traffic Act. And so more or less we've other than adding some more definitions, we've still made it that it's not allowed under certain circumstances. So we've amended the Schedule A to include under what conditions these off-road vehicles can be done. So it would be city equipment, because technically speaking, we do have utility terrain vehicles or sidewalk plows on the roads. So it will allow them, it would allow our contractors, and it would allow the police, emergency services, when they're performing their duties, to use these off-road vehicles on our roads when necessary. In the past, we had listed in the bylaw different events where we allowed these type of vehicles. So the hog jog, the parade, the dragon boat races. But what was funny, in the old schedule, it actually had dates listed, times, and so if there was any change from that, you actually needed an amendment to the bylaw to allow them to have this different time. So what we're also proposing in this is to delegate the authority of allowing these vehicles to happen to either the Director of Infrastructure and Development Services or the Director of Community Services, any exemptions for off-road vehicles. And typically, the exemptions that we have traditionally provided are to those three events that I've mentioned. There have been a couple of others in the past, but it's usually in conjunction with an application for that we already get from the city, and that's part of it. So rather than come back to council asking for allowing these off-road vehicles, it would be part of the application process, and the authority would be delegated to staff to deal with allowing those off-road vehicles as per the bylaw.
Okay, thank you. There is a staff recommendation there, but are there any questions or comments related to that? Councillor Gaffney?
Thank you, thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, and I will make the I will move the staff recommendation, and I'd also like to ask a question for private contractors that provide the same service as the contractors do for the city of Stratford. And I'm thinking particularly the winter maintenance part of it. Would there be opportunities for them to come to the city to apply to be able to provide that service using the same sorts of vehicles? Provide that important service for a lot of citizens of the city of Stratford. Thank you.
Through the chair, yes, the way the bylaw is written, there's always the opportunity for someone to come and make application to allow that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions? We do have a motion on the floor. Seeing no other comments, all in favor? Oh, sorry, Councillor Burbach, did you have a comment?
Oh, for some reason, I thought the motion wasn't on the floor yet. So I was going to make a motion. But
No, Councillor Gaffney made it, so I'll just
I
call.
missed it. Sorry.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed, if any? So the next item on the agenda is item 5.3, and that's Mutual Aid and Assistance Memorandum of Understanding for the Ontario Water and Wastewater Agency Response Network. And Mr. Jalovic, did you want to briefly go over that?
Yes, through the chair. As noted in the agreement, in the report, ONMORN is just is a group of utilities throughout the province of Ontario that have gotten together to, in effect, provide mutual aid. It doesn't bind you to, when you're called upon to provide it. But what you're really doing is in case someone does have it, if you're able to, you'd be willing to assist out. And looking over the past few years where there's been requests for assistance, a lot of it's been more on the material side. For instance, I think the City of London had a water main break, but it was a 36-inch diameter water main. You don't have many clamps sitting around in the yard somewhere because of the size, the cost of them. So they reached out to the ONMORN participants to see if anybody had anything in stock, because when you talk about a 36-inch main, that's a lot of water, or a lot of your city is without water. So they were reaching out for that type of thing, and that's what I've seen mostly. It's been mostly on those type of things where municipalities have been reaching out. As I said, it's a stock agreement. There's nothing compelling us to respond to it, but I think it's just another good tool. And as I think the chief will discuss later on in this meeting about providing, knowing that there's others out there that in case there's an emergency and you do need some assistance, you can call on others to help out if they can provide you resources.
Thank you. Are there any questions? There is a staff recommendation, but there may be some questions. I was just going to note that I believe that any cost, like if there was, let's say, a reason for more than just like, let's say, a piece of equipment, if there were staff time or anything like that, it would be covered by the municipality asking for the support. So there isn't really a cost associated other than maybe some bookkeep, like some paper keeping.
Yeah, that is correct. Same thing with, when they were looking for a clamp, they would buy the clamp when they needed for the repair. It was just those type of things. They would reimburse the community, the responding community, any costs that they would incur. And as I said in the report, it's only minor costs. It's just some staff time that we're talking about, and staying up to date on the ONMORN.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Or to make a motion, Councillor Ingram?
I will move the staff recommendation, please.
Thank you. Okay, so all in favor? Opposed, if any, and that's carried. Thank you so much. And so the next, we'll move on to item number 6 is report of the fire chief, and 6.1 is participation in Perth County Mutual Aid Plan. So I believe the fire chief is on the line, and do you want to just go over it real quickly?
Yes, through the chair. The Perth County Mutual Aid Plan allows a participating fire department to request assistance from a neighboring fire department authorized to participate in the plan approved by the Ontario Fire Marshal. Our previous bylaw, or our current one, 65/2014, That's when a major revision took place in the plan province-wide. And the Ontario Fire Marshal recommends that the bylaw be reviewed every 5 years. And we recently went through that over well over a year to get it all updated. And it was just passed by the Fire Marshal on the 31st of August of this year. The purpose of the mutual aid plan is to promote adequate and coordinated efforts to minimize loss of human life and property and damage to the environment through efficient utilization of fire department and other resources in the event of a mutual aid activation during times of natural or man-made emergencies, and to provide the organizational framework necessary to effectively manage mutual aid resources within an incident management system. All of that said, if a fire department is not a participating member of a local mutual aid plan, in this case our Perth County Mutual Aid Plan, they are unable to request assistance from neighboring municipal fire departments on a reciprocal, no-cost basis. So what this really means on the financial impact, mutual aid is based off providing assistance on the reciprocal basis with no cost to the requesting municipality and the cost being absorbed by the responding municipality. So it's almost like a you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. We help each other out when we need to, and we all operate together for the safety of the citizens. So I'd be happy to entertain any questions you may have.
Any questions for the fire chief? Councilor Burbach?
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is a great association and relationship with other fire departments. Makes a lot of sense. I'm really glad that it's a non-cost sort of cost sharing thing. I know that when we had the fire recently downtown, a citizen approached me asking about whether we had two lines, I think. He was talking about two lines of firefighters and one that wasn't able to come in time, and why didn't we? So maybe if the fire chief could provide a little bit of clarity around if we have a big fire event, do we call in a second line of our own firefighters, or do we call in sort of these mutual other municipalities, or how does it work?
So through the chair, so we initially started off with just the duty crew responding. The duty incident commander makes an assessment, and if they feel they need more people, we'll put out a call to everybody that lives within 10 minutes that's not on duty. And in that call, obviously people that are on vacation, out of the area, sick, small kids at home, whatnot, we don't expect them when they're off duty to put their own family members or put themselves at any type of risk by leaving them alone. So it's those that can attend will attend. If we don't have enough people attend for whatever reason, we'll put out what we call a second alarm call, and that'll be to all our staff that are outside that 10-minute area. So once all these processes go through, it's very, very quick, and we know within a short amount of minutes how many bodies are going to show up with our notification systems that we use in the fire department. And that tells us right away to, you know what, we're not, this fire is too big, or the structure's too big. It's not so much the fire, but the building's too big to handle if it does start to spread. And that's when we'll make an assessment of going, you know what, we either need more bodies, more firefighters, or maybe we just need a truck with one or two firefighters. But we'll make that assessment on scene. We'll call up the nearest fire chiefs that are within our area, and they'll put out a call and they'll send us what they can. What people have to realize with the mutual aid plan is you don't put your own municipality at risk. So if we're already dealing with an issue and we don't have the resources to send, it's okay for us to say to the other fire chief, we can't help you right now. Maybe reach out to this municipality or this municipality, and that we're very lucky around here that we have multiple municipalities in the county, all with their own chiefs, and they all take part in the plan. And we proved it many, many times when we need vehicles or bodies that we all come together. So it works out very, very well. When we had the fire on 18 Brunswick Street, Like I said, we're all part of the plan. It was all reciprocal. The only thing it really cost me is a few coffees, some bottles of water, and some food to keep those firefighters that came in, keep the energy going for 8 hours fighting that fire.
Right. Thank you. Thanks for the clarity on that.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Gaffney?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Somebody asked me, and it's a question of clarification. So this reciprocal agreement, it says between Stratford and Perth County, but it's really between Stratford, Perth County, with all their inclusive townships that have their own departments, and St. Mary's?
Yes. Yeah, St. Mary's is also included in that. And this is just our portion of the mutual aid plan. That's Perth County's. Every fire department and municipality in the province takes part in these.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I'll move the staff recommendation, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So if I don't see any other hands up, all in favor of the motion? Opposed, if any, and that's carried. Thank you. So moving on now to item number 7 is the capital project update. I believe there's an attachment with it, but if maybe the director could just give us a quick overview of the sort of, bigger pieces.
Yeah, through the chair, I'll just hit on a few highlights. It is a long list of things that we're working on, but I do want to highlight the Erie Street sidewalk. It's nearing completion. I think what we're really looking at is some restoration and some asphalt works that are outstanding that still needs to be done, but long overdue, and it's in. In November, we plan on doing a presentation to committee with respect to the downtown traffic study that has been completed. The actual monitoring of traffic was done in 2019, so pre-COVID. So we're using those numbers for them to base their various recommendations throughout the downtown core on intersection improvements and such. So there will be a presentation on that. We're in year 2 of our AOD compliance updates for our signals. Crane Avenue, the work is done there other than some minor restoration. So that is ready for land sales for Invest Stratford to deal with and make it known that it's available on the market. The pedestrian crossing at Huron and Huntington is operational. Again, some minor restoration work. We did have a bit of a problem with the push button when it first went into operation, but the contractor was out quickly to get that repaired and get that working again. Redford Crescent, the construction is ongoing there. Again, our normal asphalt restoration, concrete work. Matter of fact, they're out in front of 82 Erie today doing that accessible spot, working on that. And then the next large road reconstruction project or rehabilitation project is on the loan. That is ongoing. And finally, I'm sure if somebody's been along Romeo Street, they'll notice that we're out there doing that relining work, and slight delays happening there. They have those portable traffic signals up to platoon traffic through. So again, dealing with a lot of subdivision work and doing subdivision review of engineering designs for several subdivisions that have been submitted. Coventry, Countryside, the Sept property, they call it Knightsbridge, there at the corner of Mornington and line 36. And so a lot of activity in that regard. Again, operations is getting, I know it's still September, almost October, but they're starting to get equipment ready for winter maintenance. It is getting close to that time. So again, getting the equipment ready, kind of having the meetings with the crews to talk about what to expect for the winter, do little refreshers, get them to drive their beats to see if anything's changed from the previous year that take note of, because you can't see them sometimes during winter operations. You can't see everything. So doing that. We just had our third and final household hazardous waste day for the year on the 26th. We had over 650 vehicles come up for that. Staff is putting a summary together, and they want to compare it to previous years. We found a good home as far as we're concerned at the Rotary Complex. With over 650 vehicles, I think what we understand about 30 to 40 minute wait time was the maximum wait time for people. unlike the first one, haven't heard any negative comments. There may be some, but haven't heard anything of it. But we're looking at how many events to hold for next year. Probably looking at doing 4 events next year at the Rotary Complex. We find that works much better, gets the people through much quicker, that's what our plan is for 2021. So those are the highlights, and I know there's a lot more for members to read, but just wanted to hit on those. Oh, and one final thing I did want to mention. This is our Michelle Pinto, our project engineer. It's her last meeting, and unfortunately, she submitted her resignation. We didn't want to take it, but she's moving on to opportunities over at the region of Waterloo, and I want to wish her all the best in her career. She's been a real asset here with the city in her short time here.
So, Councillor Gaffney.
Thank you, and good luck, Michelle. Sorry to see you go, but I had a couple questions on in connection with your report, Ed. The sidewalk on Erie Street, where it conjoins at the railway crossing, is there some special, like, does the railway company have to come and put those two pieces in, or is it something that they wait to do separately or something? Because I just, on both sides of the railway track, it just sort of stops about 50 feet on either side of the railway track. So otherwise it's a beautiful looking sidewalk.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'll have to check with staff on that. I don't know if that was Michelle's project. I'm not sure if he's still on the line, but I will have to check, because yeah, there is requirements in dealing with those crossings, and you have to coordinate that with the rail authority.
Yeah, that's what I figured. And the other question was, somebody reached out to me the other day. Is there any sort of a timeline, and I'm not asking for a rigid timeline, but somewhat of a timeline on the extension of McCarthy to Alone?
Through the chair, I am working on a report. There has been more information requested by council on this, and so I've been gathering some additional information and working on getting a report back to council on it. And it's around the property. That's the real big issue is. I know for the capital budget, we've included some numbers in there in the near term to do that work. But at the end of the day, it's all subject to the property requirements. It's just that last little bit of property to get to a loan for the McCarthy extension.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Burback?
Thanks. Just wanted to say I'm going to be sad to see you go, Michelle, and good luck with your future endeavors. I did have a little, I guess, a heads up for the Olone. So right now Olone is one way, and they're working on the other lane so they're allowing traffic to go through. Although I've seen it, I think it's changed directions. But I cycle along there, and was cycling down there last week, and it was after construction hours. So I moved over because somebody was coming actually behind me. And but actually, no, I was going into head on with them. They were going the wrong way on the one way. So I don't know if we can let the police know. Perhaps that seemed a little dangerous to do chicken. That's a long stretch. So if somebody's actually coming in the correct direction, that would have been a bit of a problem. So maybe we can let police know that people are taking liberties, and as I mentioned, they were going the wrong way. When they drove by with their window open, they gave me the finger. So that didn't work too well.
Through the chair, yes, we've been made aware of it. We put additional signage. We will we'll advise the police as well. And it is unfortunate. I think there is ample signage out there, and we put up more, but people will do what people want to do. So it is unfortunate.
Any other items? And I just want to say it has been a pleasure working with Ms. Pinto, and we do wish her all the luck, and it is very sad to see her go. before we go on, Councillor Burback, you had something you wanted to bring up about around the river on Lakeside Drive before we move on to just the adjournment.
Yes. So a couple of people have contacted me, and I think we actually, all councillors got an email about a swan that was hit on Lakeside. So there's some opinion that traffic along there is going quite quickly. I think the speed limit on Lakeside Drive is 30, if I'm not mistaken. So that's great. If people go that speed, it's pretty safe for certainly pedestrians and cyclists. I'm not so sure about birds. But this year, 2 swans were hit by cars and both died. So that's, what is that? 7 or 10% of our swan population have demised because of cars. So there were just, I guess what I'm asking for then is do we know that people are speeding there? Is there a way that we can find out? The other possibility that I was thinking about is that shutting the road down this season seemed to be successful. A lot of people used it, but from what I hear, people were also interested in seeing it become a one-way so that we could have more use for active transportation and perhaps narrow the lane for cars a little bit, which potentially might slow them down. I don't know. I'm just wondering if there's a way that we can look into the speeding and talk about possible solutions, even if they are temporary, lane painting type of solutions. So I was wondering if that was a possibility that we could look at that.
So I was just going to also add, there is still an outstanding motion from council to look at cycling around the river. And I'm just wondering whether we could, while staff are already looking at active transportation and cycling around the river system, maybe part of this could also be a bit of a looking at traffic flow and traffic control, so it can come back as a single report. Maybe Mr. Dworak has a different idea of whether that's appropriate or not, but I'm just wondering if that's appropriate.
Through the chair, no. I just on the speeding, I'm not aware of any results. I mean, we do have that portable signboard of ours that not only does it tell the driver what speed you're doing, it actually stores information for us with respect to volume of cars in the one direction and the speed of the cars. So, we could move that. I mean, we just had it out on Foreman near Britannia just now with the school opening, and just to see what was going on there from volumes and if there was any speeding issues, which didn't say that there was a speeding problem. But we could put that out there, and at least it then at least lets drivers know too how fast they're going, and they may not be aware that that they're driving as fast as they are. So we could look at again putting that out there. But whatever motion comes out, if you want to amend looking at the cycling around the river and looking at those other options, that again, that would be a motion from this committee to council for staff to look into it.
Yeah, so I would make the motion that we would add that to the report you're already working on. That would make sense to me as well. That we would look at speed of traffic as well as cycling infrastructure around the river.
Councillor Ingram?
Thank you. So when the speed boards are up and the reports come in, is it possible to share those with council so that we can see the speed and volume of traffic in the different areas where the board has been posted?
Yes, through the chair, if you're looking for just as a matter of whenever we put them up, sharing that on a regular basis, is that what you're looking for?
Yeah,
and as part of a report.
And so maybe outside of this particular circumstance, like this one, you can include in the report because that's what Councillor Burback is asking for. But in the case of, you said it just was on Foreman Ave and has I'm not sure if it's posted somewhere else in the city, but if we can just get those reports sent to us at the time when the board is taken down, so that we can see the length of time, the duration, the volume of traffic, and then the speeds. I think that might be helpful for us just to get a handle on what's happening throughout the city.
Yeah, through the chair, I do know, I think Councilor Ingham, you've asked for some information in the past, and I think it's been quite easy to provide what it comes with the software, where you can generate some quick reports, some very easy graphs that'll give you date ranges, and it'll give you speeds and volume of traffic and such.
Okay, thank you. So, so we do have a motion to add to the report around active transportation around the river to look at some of the speeding issues and traffic flow issues. So, any other questions on that? Not seeing none. All in favor? Opposed, if any, and that's carried. Thank you. And I was just going to make a comment that the and then Councillor Gaffney, I'll go to you after. I just comment around the bike lanes around the schools and how much parking was on them. The Stratford Police Service actually posted a photograph of lots of people parking on the bike lanes. And so there were some comments from parents, well, where else do you expect us to park? And I guess the answer to that is not on the bike lanes, because you're not supposed to. But there was also this sort of you know, kids aren't using the bike lanes, but kids aren't going to use the bike lanes if there's cars parked on them. And the cars show up and park on the bike lanes, and then the bikes say that no one's using the bike lane. So I think we do have to have a look at enforcement on those stretches of bike lanes, because the long and the short of it is people won't use them if cars are parked on them. And so that's just more a comment on the photograph that Stratford Police Services had posted. Councillor Gaffney, you had something?
Yes, thank you. I actually have a couple things, Madam Chair. The first thing is the report on the parking spots on River Drive. The Google the Google picture, page 2. Where those parking spots are is lower Queens Park, not upper Queens Park. The other thing is at the corner of St. Patrick and Church Street, and this is directed to our director and quite possibly the chief, the back of Needles Appliances, there's a from the parking lot to the back of that building, there's a step down into a concrete trench, and it's all grown in. And I suspect there's probably an emergency door to get out of that building that is probably being interfered with. But the other thing that's happening is there's what's been suggested to me by the people that approach me is that there's people living down in that trench because there's been a slow and steady accumulation of garbage and old clothes and all around back in that corner of that property. So I don't know if it's a matter of somebody taking a drive-by and seeing if maybe there's some violation of the ability of egress out of that building, and maybe there's some violations if somebody is living in there or living down in there, and which I hate to think about. I wish that wasn't those things happened, and they didn't happen. But so anyway, so I told this person that I would bring it to the attention, and I thought this would be the place to do it. So thank you.
So through the chair, I'll look into that, and I'll have my staff contact any other departments that we'll need if we find anything.
Thank you.
And I was going to say that social services, they do have outreach workers for people who may be homeless, and I think the term they use is living rough, living outside. So that would probably be appropriate to bring in some of the outreach workers. Great, thank you so much. If there isn't anything else, there are no advisory committee or outside board meetings at this time. Our next meeting sorry, I have to switch back and forth. Our next meeting is October 28th, 2020. It will be electronically. And now we have a motion to adjourn, moved by Councillor Burbach. All in favor? Thank you so much. Bye now, everyone.